FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's July 3rd, 2018. We're through with half the year. Hey, join the discussion. Be a part of the show. The show is nothing without you. Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. I'm easily 100 emails behind right now. I will get to yours, I promise. It's just difficult right now. Again, kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, trade is in the news. We just had an election in Mexico. We got a full-blooded socialist, communist, collectivist in there, but he wants to work with President Trump. We've got trade wars breaking out across the globe. We got Canada in full meltdown mode, and they're ready to boot their prime minister, cool man Justin Trudeau. They want to get rid of him in the worst possible way. We're seeing it in Europe, all over the place. Well, we figured it's a good time to talk to Jeff Ferry. And Jeff, you're the trade expert. You're my go-to guy for trade because your organization really knows more about trade, deals with trade more than anybody else. I'm talking about Prosperous America. And Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Kerry. Great to be here.
Hey, so we wondered if before the election, if Trump was just talking the talk, whether or not he would walk the walk in confronting America's trade adversaries. And first and foremost among them is China, but we've got Mexico, we've got Canada, we've got the EU. Everybody is kind of living off of Americans going more and more into debt. That's become the method of financing world trade. And clearly, Trump has said no mas. He's done with it. He's walking the walk, isn't he?
Yes, I think he is. I think he surprised some people that because of all the different policies he talked about in his election campaign, trade is the one that he has gone most aggressively on actually making things happen. And I think he surprised a lot of people, including folks in the business community and folks on Wall Street, with how serious he is about fixing America's trade deficit.
And you're seeing the beginnings of a reindustrialization of the United States. Factory jobs are going up every month in the employment numbers, and it appears that he's really starting to make a difference.
I think you're absolutely right. And, you see it specifically in the industries where he's imposed tariffs. We've seen more steel jobs coming back in places like Georgia and Illinois, and Nucor opening a new facility in Florida. In aluminum, we've seen jobs coming back. In solar panels, I keep reading now about companies from all over the world choosing to build solar panel manufacturing facilities here in the United States. Yes. So the evidence is there.
And it's not just anecdotal, just like the evidence of the booming economy, the Trump economy, since he came into office. You know what this all reminds me of, Jeff? When Giuliani became mayor of New York, all of a sudden the crime rate started to just plummet. And they all said, oh, well, it's demographic, it's, abortion, less criminals being born. They gave every reason in the world except for giving the man credit for what he actually accomplished. Isn't it exactly the same way with Trump?
I think you're right. I think there's a sort of liberal consensus that politicians should do nothing and they should be given a pass. And that's a terrible thing because, the reason I consider myself an economic nationalist is because I think the reason we elect the government is to help improve the economy. That's their number one responsibility. All the other issues are secondary. And, frankly, for a cultural issue, I don't look to politicians to advise. But the economy is something they're in charge of. They've got control of all the levers, whether we're talking about interest rates or trade restrictions or trade permissions and trade openings and free trade agreements. Those are all levers that Washington can pull, and they need to pull them. And frankly, we've had 20-odd years of Democratic and Republican administrations that refused to pull those levers for a whole variety of reasons. And the reasons, like you say, are kind of boring and not important. And they all add up to, let them do nothing. Let them instead make pretty speeches. But now Trump is trying to do something about trade. I mean, I think it's too early to say it's game over and we've won. I mean, there's a lot more to do. We've still got a $500 billion trade deficit where, as you say, manufacturing employment is on the up. It's heading back, but it's still way below what it was in 2000. And, specifically, we've got some issues in that certain industries have now got protection, and it raises questions for other industries. I'd like to see auto tariffs. I think that'll help our automobile industry. I think there could be a number of others.
I think you're going to see them. I mean, look, well, first, I want to just talk about the election in Mexico. Jeff, what do you see? What effect do you see that having? In a way, this guy's Obrador's public statements, President-elect Obrador of Mexico, his public statements have been much more conciliatory and much more looking to bridge the gap than the current, more right-leaning administration in Mexico.
Yeah, and I heard you refer to him as a socialist, collectivist, et cetera, et cetera. So you and I might disagree a little bit on this issue. I think that you're right. He has traditionally been that sort of left-wing person. But what I was trying to say before is that instead of that dichotomy, you've got economic nationalists who say the government is responsible for the economy. And then you've got, fine-talking, do-nothing politicians who are really there because they like the salary and they like standing on a stage. And if you take that dichotomy, I think AMLO, as the Mexicans call him, that's Obrador's initials,
yes.
AMLO is rather similar to Trump. And Trump, of course, is not a down-the-line right-winger. I mean, Trump is a populist Republican who understands the working-class problems. Now, Obrador, AMLO, is similar. He understands that Mexicans have done badly out of NAFTA in the last 20 years, and he's particularly concerned about Mexican farmers who've been thrown off the land by too much free trade, and by the fact that Mexican wages have not risen in 20 years. So he and Donald Trump recognize that the same lousy results that the U.S. got out of NAFTA, not the same, but a different set of lousy results apply to Mexico. So I think, now, of course, you're right in that within that, there's lots of disagreements the two are going to have. But I think within the area of agreement, we could see those two guys working together.
Well, I think that's really a great point that you raised. They're much more alike than they are different. And yeah, look, for all the years Trump was around, he was basically, a lot of years, he was a Democrat, right? He was a Democrat for decades. And then all of a sudden,
absolutely,
right? Now, you could say it's
right.
Opportunistic party swapping, but then you could also say that who cares about parties? That's really not what the issue's about any longer. It's about economic performance. It's about protecting the people in the country. So let's look at these tariffs. You hear them, let's go up to our neighbor to the north, Canada. This Trudeau guy is, if you look up the definition of lightweight in the Urban Dictionary, there is a picture of Justin Trudeau in his Indian getup outfit, his Bollywood ensemble, with his weird socks. I mean, he's the very definition of soy boy in the world.
I agree with you 100%. I like what the British media refer to him as the only world leader who looks like he could perform in a boy band.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's selectively putting tariffs on U.S. industries in red states. He's directly interceding in the U.S. political system. This is not going to end well for him, is it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that Canada is Canada. He's playing to his audience. Canada has to sit down and negotiate with the United States in a tough way, because frankly, we're not. We've got minor disputes with Canada on trade, things like dairy and lumber, but these are not make or break issues. I mean, Trudeau is playing to the masses. He thinks he's going to help his electoral results by standing up and condemning Trump. It's what I referred to before about, politicians talking about what do you say, as if it's very important what you say. Well, people can say whatever they like. It's what they do that counts. And if Trudeau would get serious, that he could resolve his issues, because frankly, our real trade issues are much more with other countries than with Canada.
And don't you think he's got a lot more to gain than he has to lose here if he would work with the U.S.?
Yes, he does. And we important industries like automotive, those industries, we're going to continue working closely with the Canadians because we have no reason not to, because that's not really costing us a lot of jobs or a lot of revenue or anything else. Now, steel is a more complicated issue. We've blocked with the tariff. We've put a tariff on Canadian steel, and he's prancing around. He's upset about that. But the fundamental problem, as I say all the time whenever steel comes up, is that China accounts for 50% of the world's steel, and they've shown no serious intent to reduce that. Canada needs to work with us on that problem, and that's the way in which we can overcome the steel tariffs and eventually do away with them for friendly nations. But that requires getting tough with China, and I believe that is the medium-term game plan of the Trump administration. If we show, for 20 years we've been talking about these problems, and the other nations like Germany in particular and Canada say, yeah, we agree with you, it's a problem, let's hold a forum. Let's go to Beijing and hold a forum. And they all eat a lot of dinners and go to Beijing, and nothing changes because, of course, the Chinese aren't going to change things unless they're forced to, because that's their strategy, to dominate world steel production. So I think the Trump administration felt that our allies have to feel some pain. And once they feel some pain, then they'll join us, because it's obvious, it's like staring a truck in the face that's about to run you down. China has accelerated from something like 3% of world steel production to 51% of world steel production today. And they continue investing in steel, even though they say they're going to retire used capacity. Whatever they retire is replaced by newer capacity. So,
right.
This is a problem we've got to deal with. And I think what you see with the administration is a strategy of let our allies feel some pain. And when they've felt it for, I don't know how long it's going to take. Maybe it'll take a couple of years, or maybe it'll be a little sooner. Then they'll say, okay, now what can we do to seriously attack this problem? And does it mean we all stop Chinese imports? I don't know where it goes or what it means, but some sort of unified action is necessary.
And that is a really great point. So far to date, Jeff, you're rating President Trump's performance and what he's done, his record to date on trade. What would you give him in terms of a grade?
Good question. I mean, I think it's kind of early, I guess. I mean, I've always said, you can't, with the economy, it takes a while for all the effects to go through. But, let's say you give him a B+ because I want to see tougher action against China. I mean, so we've got $50 billion of tariffs. He's talking about another $200 billion. I'm all in favor of that. We've got a $375 billion a year trade deficit with China, which is not based on comparative advantage as the phrase we all learned in the textbook. It's based on China's strategic political decision to build up its economy and to dominate certain world industries. So we need to reverse that $375 billion. So I'm going to give him a B+ and say the way he gets to A is by taking more aggressive action on China. And I think that's coming. I mean, where we were in July, I think by December, things will look a little different. He'll have fulfilled some of these things. I'm pleased by the tea leaves I'm reading in the White House, that the tea leaves are falling in his direction increasingly. A lot's improved since a couple of globalists left the White House.
Who shall go nameless, right?
Yes, there's no need to name them. I mean, because what you want is for them to support the Trump policy. So,
Absolutely.
Let's not gang up on them. Let's say, they're good guys and they'll do a fine job on Wall Street or wherever they went.
And let them figure it out. Hey, so as far as in terms of what we have to gain and what we have to lose, don't we have a lot more to gain here than we have to lose? I mean, worst case scenario, we get into this trade war, we cut our deficit by, say, 50, 60, 70%, and we cut our exports by a minor amount because the trade disparity is so huge, over $500 billion a year. We come out ahead no matter what happens here, don't we?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's the fundamental math, which has been true from the day he was elected. We've got such a huge deficit, the largest deficit in the world and the largest in world history, that any cut in trade is bound to improve our trade balance, and that's bound to feed back into stimulating our manufacturing sector. So we have a hell of a lot more to gain than to lose. And that's been true all along. And particularly with countries like China, where basically we are importing 5 times as much as we're exporting. Yeah. So they recognize that they've got a lot more to lose than we do. And, Germany is running scared. They're sending the European Commission president over to negotiate on behalf of all of Europe, in other words, on behalf of Germany, to try to keep the door open for German cars.
Hey, well, it scares the hell out of me. When you look at it, this has always been Trump's art of the deal. He says whenever he goes into a deal, he looks to see what his downside is first, because the upside will take care of itself. And this is a perfect example of the Trump art of the deal in action.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's doing a good job of negotiating, despite all the nonsense in the media that we read every day.
Oh, forget that.
Make it seem like it's impulsive. But in reality, this is a policy that was worked out even before he took office in January 2017 of, turning the screw tighter and tighter on trade restrictions. I mean, and that's what we're seeing. And the other countries are in a weaker position. On the other hand, what I wanted to add, Kerry, is, you shouldn't, in my view, we shouldn't make it seem like it's a slam dunk and an easy thing, because some of these changes, the auto tariffs, for instance, are going to squeeze the profitability of some large multinationals and force adjustments. And the CEOs don't like to have to make adjustments. In other words, move production back to the United States, because in the short term, that could hurt profits. So, when people say the business community is against the tariffs, what they mean is the CEOs and the senior management of multinationals are against the tariffs because it's going to hit next year's profits.
Exactly.
Of course, the workers have a lot to gain, but those CEOs have got a lot of political clout here in Washington, on Capitol Hill and elsewhere.
Not with Trump, though, for sure. He really is workers first, right? I mean, he really is doing what he set out to do and what he said he was going to do. And all you had to do was listen to his campaign rhetoric. Yeah, I know it was rhetoric. I know a lot of it was public show, all that. Hey, what do you think is going to happen, Jeff, as far as the local content laws for North America, which enables these Chinese and international European companies, everybody, to set up, basically set up subsidiaries, assembly facilities in Canada and in Mexico, and then flood the U.S. market. That's going to change, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that what we're going to see, when you think about it, these two men, Donald Trump and Andres Manuel Obrador, are going to sit down, and Trump's going to say, we want local content rules that require more content to be made in the U.S. And Obrador is going to say, I'm not against that. What I'm in favor of is some way to boost the Mexican wages of these workers. And they're going to find common ground there. I mean, Obrador is going to have a long wish list of things that need to be done in Mexico. And I suppose top of the list is stopping the random killings, because God knows that's a dangerous country to walk around in. And there's surely some agreement that they can come to, which can give us what we want, which is stopping the hemorrhaging of jobs down to Mexico, where workers are paid $3 an hour, and give something to them that they want. And, by the way, I'm completely in favor of that. It's a poor country. We should help them out, just not at the expense of nearly destroying our automobile industry and many other industries.
Oh, totally. You're on the money there. So a deal is going to get cut. I think a deal will be cut on the wall and immigration too. My feeling has always been, almost from the beginning, that eventually the Mexicans would secure their side of the border and thereby prevent this huge onslaught of immigrants coming over the U.S. border. I've always believed that.
That's interesting, and I think that sounds like a good solution for me as well. I'm no expert on immigration, but it's a drama that again, I find the media trying to turn it into a horrific soap opera is is just disgusting, just a distraction from the real problems that face all these countries. I mean,
exactly.
The problem in El Salvador is lawlessness. And we don't really solve the problem by attracting ambitious people to the United States. We solve the problem by helping the Salvadoran government to abolish lawlessness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Could not agree with you more. Jeff, I know people are going to want to find out about you, find out about your organization. Tell us how we connect with you on the web.
Yeah, thanks, Ferry. So we are prosperousamerica.org. We are the Coalition for Prosperous America. We're a group of manufacturers, labor unions, farmers, and ranchers, all united by a feeling or a belief or a conviction that the trade deficit is a giant problem facing America, and the economic challenge is to rebuild manufacturing, restore health to our farming community, and to get America back on an economic growth path. So go to prosperousamerica.org, read our articles on the problems, join our organization, and participate.
All right. Excellent. Hey, we really enjoy speaking with you. You're one of the few people out there, Jeff, that really gets to the crux of the problem. So many others out there are just dissembling and really not getting to the issue. Hey, questions, comments, be part of the show. Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com, and the Twitter feed's @KerryLutz. The Facebook page is Financial Survival Network. Jeff, we'll talk to you real soon. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Kerry. Always a pleasure. Happy 4th of July.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.